It's been a fun morning so far, huh? Yeah. Although I kind of feel like I'm in like a really good conservative comedy club. I've been laughing so hard, like I feel like, man, energy a little bit. So the topic of my discussion, my talk today, is going to be about creating a culture of excellence. But I need to create a little bit of parameter for this conversation first, because we talk about creating a culture, and many of you may be sitting there going, what does that have to do with me? I don't own a company, right? I'm not in management, I'm not in leadership. No one's asking me my opinion about how a culture should be. But I'm gonna bring that home for you. And I'm gonna put that onus on you that you actually are the embodiment of culture in your organizations, no matter where you are in your organization. If you're at the very top, if you are entry level, if you don't even have a job yet, you have an influence over culture in organizations that you're involved in. And honestly, that's not just our vocation. It's our avocations, our hobbies. It's the churches we attend. It's the organizations, the ministries that we get involved in. And so we're going to talk a little about that today. And I'm going to cover two different topics, really. They're going to all tie together, but I'm going to talk about climate, which is the environment in which culture lives and breathes. And I'm going to talk about culture, which is when it actually gets lived out. So let's start with even the topic of the discussion is a bit of a misnomer, because culture really can't be created by leaders. You hear that said all the time. You read in the papers, somebody takes over a company and they say, we are going to change the culture here. But one, a leader can't do that by themselves. All they can do is set the stage for culture. They can't actually live it out, because the people live it out. You live it out. The second thing is that culture, and a great one, is very, very difficult to achieve. And if you have a bad culture, if you have something that's toxic or even not great, it is a long-run process to turn that around. We have a great culture at Main Street, but we have to protect that each and every day. We actually have to fight for it. So it's really important to understand this, that great leaders set the stage for culture, but the people live it out. Let's talk a little bit about what culture is actually to begin with. What is organizational culture or company culture? It's a system of shared assumptions, values, and beliefs, which governs the way that people interact, the way that they behave in organizations. This is both internally and also externally as you interact with the outside world. These shared values have a strong influence. They may be the strongest influence on how people behave, how they act, how they dress, when they show up, and ultimately how they perform their jobs. Every organization has a culture, every single one of it. You may not know it, you may not like it, but an organization has a culture. And the company's values, not what they say on the wall or what they write in papers or on websites and things like that, but a company's actual values, what they hold most dear, show up in the way that they interact with their people. Who gets rewarded, who gets promoted, who gets hired, and ultimately, who gets fired. But why is culture so important? Why is this such a big deal? Well, it's right now sitting on the minds of people. Culture is one of the most searched for terms on the internet. Merriam-Webster actually said that in 2014, culture was the word of the year. People were so interested in this topic, they were trying to figure it out. Why? MIT professor Edgar Schein said that culture determines and limits strategy. There's a quote that's often attributed to Peter Drucker, which may or may not be actually his, but it's attributed to him, that says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's a little more colorful. But what does this mean? It means that you can have a great vision, you can actually have a phenomenal strategy, and if you don't have a great culture, you are undermining your very existence. You're actually sucking the life out of your organization. Culture is the basis for our engagement of our people. It's what actually moves people from being interested in what we're doing to being bought into what we're doing. And then ultimately from being bought into what we're doing to being all in. And the power that we have, the exponential power we have, the multiplication, the theme for the day, is when you have a group of people who are all in and completely sold out to a cause, who are pulling together and can make an incredible difference. The problem is that our work culture, generally, is in a state of crisis. Listen to some of these statistics. Over half of businesses rate their culture issues as urgent, not important, urgent. Gallup poll says that disengagement costs U.S. businesses up to $550 billion per year. That's money that's not going back in the economy. That's money that's not driving business growth. That's money that's not being paid to you. $550 billion a year. Nearly 2 in 5 employees, so almost 40% of employees, say that they are actually seriously considering leaving their business. And only 31% of people say that they are engaged at work. But maybe even more troubling is that 17.5% of people say they are actively disengaged. They're not just checked out, they're actually actively checking out. That's a bad deal. So let me make it real and personal for you, though, because still you might be saying, that's the organization, I can't do anything about it. Think about what it might mean. Imagine with me for a second what it might mean if you had a great culture, or if you were part of a great culture. What if you were only surrounded by rock stars at your company? Everybody through their performance reviews, 100% were in the top tier. And that's all you worked with every day. Wouldn't that feel good? Wouldn't that feel exciting? What if you could show up to work on Monday, well rested from the weekend, but actually excited and energized to go to work? Like you couldn't wait to get there, right? I can't wait to get work on Monday morning, and it's not because I have 8 kids. I like them too. But I can't wait to get going. I can't wait to see what the future holds. I can't wait to see what happens. I can't wait to work with the people that we've got. What if you didn't have to babysit your coworkers? And you actually knew that they were going to show up and they were going to do their job, and they were going to do what they were supposed to do so that you could do what you were supposed to do? What if you didn't have to worry at all about ever leaving your company? Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't if you knew that you could stay here for the rest of your career? When I started Main Street, I realized something very quickly. Most organizations are afraid every day that their people are going to leave them. They try to hold on, don't leave, don't leave. But they treat them on a daily basis as if they never can. Like, you're trapped here, you can't go anywhere. And I thought, why can't we switch that? Why can't we know and understand that people are going to leave for various reasons at different times, right? Sometimes it's just a life change. One of my former assistants that I had, her husband got a residency in Buffalo, New York. They moved. I was excited for her. What a new adventure. That's exciting. But what if we knew that sometimes people are going to leave, but we actually treated them every day like they could spend the rest of their lives here? They could be totally all in for the rest of their career. What if your coworkers and you clearly understood the mission of your organization, and so you knew what you were even all in about, what you're passionate about? And finally, what if you knew that the best talent was actually going to want to join your organization? What if you knew that? Wouldn't that change the dynamic of how you felt when you showed up to work? So I want to talk a little bit about culture and climate, as I referenced earlier. And to me, it's somewhat analogous to a thermostat and a furnace. A thermostat is the setting. It's the intended goal. This is what we want to accomplish. We want the room to be 72 degrees. But the furnace is what actually accomplishes the work. It produces the heat. It pushes it out to bring the temperature up to actually create the environment. So climate is defined as the set of properties in a work environment, either perceived directly or indirectly, that strongly influence the actions and job performance. In leadership, one of our major jobs, one of our main focuses is actually to set the right climate for culture to exist. So climate is established and then safeguarded by leadership. That message emanates from the top, and you may be there in your organization, but the buy-in must happen at all levels of an organization. So how do we create a great climate? Let's start with that, and then we're going to talk about culture in a minute, and then I'm going to bring it home to you and talk about practical applications that you can take home no matter where you are to actually apply this, to live out great culture. So first of all, to have a great climate, to set the stage for a great climate, you actually have to provide clarity. Why do we exist? What's the point? What's the vision? What are we going after? This is actually true as individuals too. Why do you exist? What's the point? Why are you here? This is the most fundamental question that we can answer as people and as organizations. It's so important such that if we found that the reason for our existence changed or shifted, that we should actually go out of existence. Our organization should actually just close up. If you go around to our organization, to anybody in it, and you ask them, why does Main Street exist? They will tell you, Main Street exists to transform lives. That's it. That's why we exist. If we got to a point where we couldn't do that anymore, we'd close up shop. And I've told our people that, and they know that. Vision, as we just heard about here, is the combination of ideology, those core values, the things you hold most dear, and a vivid picture of your future state. It's what you're hoping to accomplish together, and people need to know and understand that. They need to know where you're headed. This also then creates a common language for the organization. So you're all speaking the same language. You're not saying one thing and somebody else is hearing another. In a program that I'm in right now, they talked about how you might say, we're going to fly to London. And the people here, we're going across the Atlantic. And those are different because they land in France or Germany or somewhere else. And you're like, and they say, we did it. We went across the Atlantic. You're like, but we're going specifically to London. And you're like hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away. The second thing we have to do to have great climate is we have to establish context. We have to tell people what's expected of them, and we have to protect it. This clearly establishes the acceptable and unacceptable behaviors. So for us at Main Street, we just wrote it down. We wrote it out, scripted it, and created a roadmap that we call Culture Map. Can we get a view of this for people on the sides? So our culture is built on love, faith, hope, and excellence. And then we also wrote down here the antithetical behaviors, the things that are not acceptable in our organization. We don't allow stonewalling, gossip, entitlement, unresolved issues. We don't, and avoidance of accountability or poor work ethic. This is what we hire against, recruit against, fire against, compensate, and ultimately do all of our performance reviews against this map. And we've done it. There are times where we've had to fire people because they wouldn't stop gossiping. The Bible calls gossip one of the most destructive forces in the universe. And yet it puts it in the same category as we see in the news right now as hurricanes. We can see that destructive, and that's a terrible things. And yet the Bible actually lists gossip right next to it. So we just said, that's going to undermine everything we're doing. We're going to hold people accountable, and we're not going to allow it. But the coolest thing happens. When culture is lived out through the people, I don't walk around protecting that. My people do. When gossip starts to come around and somebody's standing there, they came in from another organization, as Dave Ramsey said, bad behaviors enter the building and they got to go. Says bad behaviors can leave and you can stay, or you both got to go. I like the way he says it. But I've seen our people actually say, hey, we don't do that here. I don't know where you came from and all that. We don't do that here because that's not what we're about. We're in a common purpose. We're all in. We're bought in. You got to think about culture holistically. It's the sum of everything you do. It's from the coffee you serve to the way that you interact with that big business negotiation. It's all of those parts. And so I've got a couple minutes left, and I want to bring this down to you as a person because you still may think, but what do I do about it? No one's going to listen to me. I'm not even in an organization right now. But you can change the culture for you as a person. You can change the way that you interact with the world around you. And as such, you can have an incredible influence in the world around you. John Maxwell defines leadership as influence. Leadership is influence, and he says that we influence as many as 4 people daily on average as people. And some of us, it's many more than that. So what are we doing to influence people the right way? What are we doing to influence them in a positive way so that there's a lasting impact for us? You have that opportunity. Use it. Second, seek to be excellent in all things. There's a reason why on our culture map, we actually list excellence as one of our pillars. Because the truth is, and this is the honest, candid truth, if we're not excellent, no one cares about the rest. We can have the most fun work environment. We can give people lunches. We can have great coffee. We can even be really kind in the way that we interact with each other. And if we're not excellent, who cares? What's commendable about that? What are people looking toward and saying that's aspirational? Colossians says it well. Bondservants, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service or people pleasers, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Whatever you do, work heartily, as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive your inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. God is our audience. Let's be excellent for his sake. And when people see that, they will have thanksgiving to God and they will glorify his name. Encourage the conversation about culture. Start the conversations, one-on-one, start the conversations. How can we be better? Don't look for problems. Anybody can look for problems. But look for problems and then offer solutions. Practical piece. Anytime you see a problem, come up with 3 possible solutions and recommend one. Recommend one. It shows the thinking and it starts to, the exponential effect of that, the multiplication of that is that people start that conversation and start thinking about how things can be better, not stating facts about how bad things are. 4th, be patient. culture and its impact takes time. I've been running this company now for 14 years, right? The big growth for us has only been in the last 5 or 6 years, but we've had to build this thing slowly over time. There will be tough times, moments of uncertainty. We've heard about some of them today. My wife and I, we picked up a phrase from somewhere, and I couldn't even tell you where, but it says that heroes are no braver than the rest of us. They just stay in the battle 5 minutes longer. And with 8 kids and a company and all the other stuff that we have going on and a marriage that's wonderful, but you have to fight for it, we occasionally just look at each other and just say, 5 minutes more, just 5 minutes more. Be patient, it takes time. And finally, set an example for others and refuse to engage in negative behaviors. Just refuse. The problem with bad behaviors in an organization is that they band together and they create a subculture and they recruit. It's like a cancer in the organization. And we've seen in ours where one little problem has another little problem, and pretty soon you got 3 or 4 little problems. And then they start bringing people in. Hey, did you know about? Did you think about? Did you do that? You got to go in and you got to root that out in the organizations. But one way to do it from an individual standpoint is just refuse to engage. And listen to what it says in Timothy. Paul's charge to Timothy. Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but instead, set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. You have influence. You are a leader. Set an example, follow the advice of Scripture, do it well, be excellent, and cultures will change. Thank you.